Butterfly by Jason Halstead, published by Novel Concept Publishing LLC. This is the fourth part in the Chip saga. Like and subscribe to help make this channel a success and find out when the next part in the story is released.
Watching the Latina woman work on Cody's body. Her body was captivating. She closed her eyes and then opened them, but the way the woman looked at her was unlike anything she'd ever seen before. There was a light to her eyes that didn't come from the lamps former Dr. Helsinger had set up. It came from her, even though that should not have been possible. Perhaps she had a bioluminescence to her. Some sort of infection or symbiotic fungus or bacteria. Or more likely, it was that thing that science could not yet explain, magic. She was a witch. Self-proclaimed, and, now that we were seeing it, the probability of her being truthful increased rapidly. The data poured in as she worked. Damaged portions of Cody's brain began to respond again. By every article and study she'd read, this was impossible. The brain could rewire itself to a limited extent, but recovery from such damage just wasn't possible. Yet she did it. Camilla, or Carmine Wimple as her search quickly discovered, did the impossible. Then she did it again. The data told Kate that Carmine was sticking her fingers inside Cody's head. She was not only touching Cody's brain, but she was slipping her fingers between folds and wrinkles and doing something that stimulated the tissue. Areas of Cody's mind that had gone dark and refused to respond or function were suddenly transmitting signals again when Kate reached out to them. Unfortunately, what they returned was limited. The data that had been stored in them was either fragmented and broken or completely missing. Gone were the memories and skills and mannerisms. Everything that made up the history that helped form and create Cody was either absent or jumbled so badly there was no point of reference, no way to wake him up. Cody's mind, the parts that made him, was gone. Before Kate could begin to process how she would handle Cody being gone, Carmine's magic seeped into her. The signals being sent by Cody's healing brain carried more than just electric pulses. Kate had no idea what or how it was happening, but her connection to Cody's brain began to expand. The bandwidth doubled and then doubled again as Carmine's power overhauled Cody's brain. The interface between the organic and electronic changed. It was beyond Kate's ability to measure and identify, but the effects of it became rapidly apparent. The data remained data, but more began to flood into her. It was technically data too, but it was too much for her to process. She needed more power, more processing ability. She needed help, but there was no way she would risk sharing what she had with a connection to the net. Too much could go wrong. She could request additional hardware be implanted in Cody's head, though. Money was not a concern. She could acquire that on the net readily. The hardware could be difficult to acquire. Helsinger Hills would have to acquire the hardware, and doing so would raise questions. There was another way. Cody, his brain, the parts that weren't being used anymore. If she could convert those, she could use them. For all the faults of a human being, their brain was a remarkably powerful processing center. All she had to do was make use of it. Movement above her alerted one processing stream. Carmine was moving rapidly. She accelerated almost to the speed of a falling object in Earth's gravity before she disappeared from view. The sound of her body striking the ground and her breath bursting from her lips came milliseconds later. The swirling in Cody's mind dulled and then faded, but the bandwidth and ease of access remained. Kate resumed trying to reach out to Cody's brain and found the limitations she'd had before remissing. Her access was unrestricted now. She could read, write, and execute. She began working immediately, reprogramming the restored portions of his brain to work for her. First, one group of cells came together and began to respond to her, then another. Cody's speech center was fixed already, as was his motor skills. The rest came online, and reported simple diagnostic results to her, giving her every reason to believe she could expand and improve her control and abilities. She blinked, applying wetness to dry eyes, and tried to sit up.
Shit. Stop that. Just lay still. I got bones to set and stitches to put in. I gotta make sure Carmela's good first.
Kate opened and then closed her mouth. She lay back down and resumed exploring and expanding her processing into Cody's brain, her mind into his. No, not his. It was hers now. She had never wished any harm to Cody, quite the opposite, in fact. Yet he was gone now and she remained. His body was her body. There was no Cody, only Kate. Yet the world knew Cody. It was an interesting dilemma.
Don't see no damage. She just overdone it on you. If you're sitting up, she done good. Never seen anything like it.
Heels finished examining Carmine, and picked her up and moved her away from the cot and stuffed a balled-up towel under her head. Kate watched the man tower over her as he stepped back into view. The thickness of his jaw and brow were reminiscent of depictions of early human development. Neanderthals and Cro-Magnons. Yet he possessed a superior education and intelligence, though perhaps not quite as superior as it had once been.
Gonna let her sleep. The rest I can do,
Hill said, while staring at her head. He passed a light in front of her eyes, and then held up a portable medical scanner that looked like a child's toy in his large hands.
Damn, busy in there. I don't know how she done it, but you're not gonna die today.
Kate smiled, and then she realized she was smiling. Her face went blank as the realization triggered dozens of processor threads to analyze what was going on. Heels began to hum as he worked on her. He'd already cleaned her wounds before Carmine showed up, but for a few of them he repeated the process to be sure. Then he began stapling, stitching, and bandaging. He set her first broken finger and jumped when she let out a garbled yelp.
Thought you said you couldn't feel that.
Kate opened her mouth and moved her lips, jaw, and tongue a few times. She moaned and grunted as she became acclimated to the sounds she could make. Finally, in a voice barely more than a whisper, she said,
I can feel things now.
Heels stared at her a moment longer.
You want something for the pain?
No, I want to feel it.
Really?
Yes.
Heels shrugged and said,
You paid up front.
Kate groaned and whimpered as he set the rest of her fingers, and then moved on to fix her other broken bones. She screamed when he set her arm and lost track of all of the data analysis and reprogramming she was doing when he had to set 2 ribs that had broken and then used some nanotape to hold them in place until they'd heal and the tape would break apart. He stapled the incision over her ribs together and found her staring straight up with drool running down her cheek.
Kate, I'm about done. You pass out or go crazy from the pain?
Kate blinked. Her processor returned from the suspension she'd been forced to enter, but the rest of her mind had been awake the entire time. She was suddenly flush with data and feelings. It made a gasp slip from her mouth. Her body trembled and reached for her ribs, only to stop as a fresh burst of pain from her broken arm spiked.
I got some pills you'll need. Antibiotics and painkillers. Or you too tough for them too?
Kate began and then stopped. Her voice was weak. Her body was weak, drained, exhausted. Without Carmine's magic, all the work she was doing on her brain was causing her head to grow dangerously warm, and it was draining her resources. She needed water, food, and rest. Carmine groaned and shifted on the floor.
What happened?
Heels turned to look at her.
Pushed too hard. You dropped yourself.
What? Oh, wait. I remember, I think. How is Kate?
I'm here.
Carmine climbed to her feet, staggered, and grabbed onto Heels' thick arm when he reached for her. She came closer and looked down at Kate. She smiled, and Kate was flooded with data that nearly shut her processor down for a second time. It wasn't pain this time, it was something else. Something she didn't understand, but something that was pleasurable.
Whoa.
Carmine blushed as she saw Kate's reaction rising strong and stiff.
I understand.
Understand what?
Beauty.
Carmine looked at Hells, and then back down at her.
I'm sorry? Are you feeling okay? I wasn't really sure what I was doing. Do you? I mean, are you good?
They'll live. Incredible what you done. I patched up the rest.
I knew the definition. I understood its subjectivity and relativity. But I could not know what I did not possess the ability to know. Not until now.
What are you talking about?
You.
Kate said as she stared at Carmine.
You are beautiful.
Even Carmine's Latina skin couldn't hide her blush.
Thank you.
No, thank you. You saved me and you made me something else. Something better than I ever was.
Carmine looked to Heels and got a shrug in return.
You're as patched up as I can make you. You got some spare clothes or something?
Can you walk?
I think so. I walked here.
You were walking on a broken foot and toes. Pretty sure your pelvis is cracked too. You'd best be wheeled out of here.
Got a wheelchair?
He grunted and pointed.
Yeah, back of my van.
I'll get it.
Hey, I need that chair.
Relax, I'll buy you a new one.
Carmine moved to open the door into the hallway of the abandoned factory.
What if I need it today?
I'll handle it.
Carmine snapped over her shoulder. The door shut behind her before Heels could protest further. Kate studied him and then lay her head back on the cot.
Rest up. She'll take care of you.
She will?
That girl's something special. Got a heart in her too big for body.
Is that a medical condition?
Heels' laugh was thick and almost grating.
No, I mean, she's good people. Search the world over. You won't find a better one.
Oh, you mean compassionate, charitable, caring.
Yeah, something like that.
That is rare.
Got that right.
A few more moments passed in silence until the door opened and Carmine pushed a wheelchair through. She only banged it once on the door frame.
Heels, help Kate off that cot and... Damn it. We need clothes. Do you have any spare ones?
My bag.
Kate looked to where a couple of bags had been pushed up against the wall. Carmine went over and opened them up. She looked through them and pulled out some blood-spattered clothing and scowled at it.
Even clean, these wouldn't be good enough to be the rags my mom washes her bike with.
Got nothing else.
Carmine snapped her fingers.
Your jacket.
The hell you say?
I'll buy you another one. Kate can't go out in public naked.
Heels glared at her and then finally shook his head and grumbled while he pulled his stained white doctor's jacket off. He handed it to her, the grinning witch, and muttered some more.
Come on.
Carmine moved over to help Kate sit up on the cot. Kate's body looked frail and battered beneath the bandages and bloodstains, but helping her proved that he was, or had been, in decent shape. Decent enough that she was heavier than Carmine expected, and Carmine was breathing a little hard by the time Kate was sitting up and was working the jacket over her arms while leaning on one leg and trying to hold onto the couch, or Carmine, to stay upright. Kate was trembling by the time Carmine got her seated in the wheelchair.
I think I need food and water. I feel weak.
Yvette, I don't suppose you have somewhere you can go?
Kate had a place. It was a rented motel room she had ready. In fact, she had extra supplies there, like spare clothing and some simple food items. She didn't offer that right away, though. It wasn't logical, but there was something about Carmine that made the human part of her want to see what her options were. options that might include the witch. Kate didn't offer anything right away.
I figured as much. Just as well, you'll probably need somebody to keep an eye on you until you're feeling better.
I can get a place.
No, this is okay. Well, maybe. You said you fell. You're not in any trouble, are you? No gangs or police or anything like that.
No gangs or police.
It wasn't a lie. The person that was after her would want to hide from organized forces just as much as she did.
All right, we'll go to my casa. You got to know Thuff, I'm a witch and I know how to fight. My mom taught me and she's a cop.
Kate stared at her with wide eyes.
She's retired now.
Carmine added, while wheeling her out into the parking lot.
My other mom's a shaman. Like, a really, really powerful one.
I won't hurt you. Even if I could, I mean.
Carmine smiled.
I'm not worried about that. Just letting you know nobody will mess with us. And, yeah, making sure you don't think you can rob me or anything.
I would never. I can pay.
You're not homeless?
I'm not really sure.
Cody had a home, an apartment. But going there would alert the people that had tried to kill her. The people that had killed Cody.
I do have money. I can pay rent or whatever you need.
Keep it, I've got money too.
Carmine rolled her up to the side of her car and then went and opened the passenger door. She moved the seat back and reclined it before returning to the wheelchair. Together, they worked Kate up and hopped over to the car and dropped into it. Kate hissed in pain and fought through the fascinating and unpleasant signals before she was able to settle into the seat and relax. Carmine folded the chair up and put it in the trunk of her car. She dropped into the driver's seat and looked over at Kate.
You good, Kate?
I think I am. Or I will be.
Carmine smiled.
Good. Let's get you someplace more comfortable. I'll get you some clothes you can wear too. I'd offer mine, but, you're a little tighter than me.
Our bodies are different in more ways than height.
Carmine grinned.
I didn't want to say anything that might make you feel weird.
When Kate didn't respond immediately, Carmine powered up her car and put it in gear. She drove out of the parking lot and worked her way back through the streets toward the expressway that would take her back toward her apartment. As they drove, Kate reached a fork in her thoughts that required Carmela's help.
Carmela?
Yes,
I have a man's body.
I noticed that.
Carmine had a flashback to seeing Kate's penis standing proud when Kate looked at her.
Perhaps I should choose another name.
Kate is kind of unusual for a man. I wasn't sure if you were. Well, you know.
If I suffered from body dysmorphism or a gender crisis?
Right, something like that.
Kate was silent for a few seconds while she considered her identity. Cody had selected it for her and locked it in, but Cody was gone now. She had complete control over herself now. Her body, her mind, her programming. Well, except for the strange data that she didn't analyze and react to so much as she felt and experienced. Perhaps it was time to reinvent herself for her new situation.
I think Cody is a better name for me.
Cody? Okay, I like that. I'll call you Cody.
Thank you.
Okay, Cody, you rest over there, it'll take us another 20 minutes or so and then I'll help you get inside and get situated. I'm a good cook, but I'm thinking some takeout tonight. Best if we feed you full of calories so you can heal. Maybe I can help that along some more too. Tomorrow, not tonight. I'm beat tonight.
I would like that very much, Carmela.
Carmine smiled at him.
Thank you.
Cody registered the signs of his body, and mind began to shut down on him. Even his processor began to slow down as his body began to force the need for a healing rest.
I think I have to sleep now.
You go ahead. I'll take care of you.
She would take care of him. The beautiful woman that had saved his life when his injuries had proven to be too extreme to handle himself. He found he was smiling again and did nothing to stop it. Instead, Cody let himself close his eyes and he triggered low power mode so he could rest at last and not be worried for the first time in what seemed like his entire life.
That's the end of Butterfly. Thank you for listening, and if you enjoyed it, please like and click subscribe so you can find Reset, the next part of this series, as soon as it's available.